Okay, good morning, guys. It's Ron. Saturday morning already. If you can't believe it, it's already February. So, with that in mind, as Pastor reminded me earlier, tomorrow is California. While my mind is on it, okay, just to remind everybody, uh, all the teachers that is. But do we have any questions? Any questions or something you may have observed this week that may have caught your attention? Or something we may have discussed. Any questions and or comments?
Before we go on, phone number ending in 066. I think we can hear. Are you in the car or something? If anybody's in the car, uh, make sure to mute your phone, please. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Can everybody check and see if the phones are muted, please?
Let me hit.
Okay. Thank you. Well, again, good morning. I hope and trust you've had a good week. Been an interesting week politically, I suppose, but it always is. But any thoughts and questions on anything we may have discussed or anything else that may have grabbed your attention during the course of the week that you'd like to talk about? Okay. Um, I guess one of the things we had a couple of articles that were sent this week. I know I sent one on Nikki Haley uh, and comments that she made, and Nick sent one talking about labor in prisons. I thought both of those were pretty interesting. Which one of those you want to look at the prison one and discuss it, kind of enlighten everybody of what that is saying, Nick? And maybe we'll can open that up a little bit.
Sure. So I sent just over text message anyway, if you were on that text message, just an article detailing how it's been in practice for a while, but it is something that I believe is going to become more and more of a well, depending on which direction we go, more and more of a thing, and that is openly using prisoners as slave labor. So, I mean, a private prison corporation lending, quote unquote, prisoners out to any place that needs workers. And that includes picking produce and food in the sort of same spaces that migrant workers work. That includes everything up to eventually everything. It will include everything, including retail, food service, anywhere you need somebody to work. There is an increasing desire to push for it to be acceptable to use prisoners to do so. And that is part of the white supremacist backlash and the increasing, it appears, sort of attempt to establish an extremely patriarchal, European-dominated system before it is too late for them, quote unquote, which is essentially the dissolving of the white supremacist foundation of the United States and the quote Western world in general. It's essentially, the simple political term is fascism, but it is more broadly just the dominance of people who consider themselves elite and above the lesser, quote unquote, races of the world. It's just a renewed push for a different form of slavery because the power structure does not want to shift or change anything about itself. It is tied to capitalism, as capitalism is itself an extension of this desire to dominate the earth. And it is tied to the psychological and spiritual foundations of this desire to remain dominant in the first place. And it is all part of a trend that is, as I said, it is the backlash against the move towards a more harmonious and stable humanity. It is backlash against that move towards harmony from those who wish to remain in a position of dominance. It is, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick. I'll wait till you finish.
Yeah, I was just going to say it is just an example of that sort of obvious institutionalization of that extreme authoritarianism, that extreme egocentric desire to enforce dominance and artificial hierarchy onto human society and human relations. It is, as Charlie Chaplin said in that one of his famous movies, these are the actions of machine men with machine hearts. It is the push towards a sort of materialistic, anti-human ego authoritarianism that is the psychological and sort of spiritual basis of, once again, a sort of political movement like fascism and authoritarianism and dominance in general. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Nick, I want to, thank you for sending that article. For some of you, you may know that I work with the diversion program here in Philadelphia, with young adults with regards to helping them to get their felonies expunged. And when I read the article, it just kind of made me realize the importance of us being able to share our light and energy with regards to those spiritual instructions or those moral exhortations in terms of our young people truly understanding what having a record would involve or detail. And to have a felony, again, sometimes, reading the article about how prisoners are used for economic, empowerment in terms of the European system, I had two experiences within the last month. And one was with the young man who was able to humble himself to apologize just for his anger, towards a public official. And I was really happy to see that the judge had some empathy in terms of helping the person to realize, the statement that he made. But more importantly, it was a sense of one judge being able to have empathy and the person was not, locked up. In another situation, in another jurisdiction in Pennsylvania, in Montgomery County, there was another judge who had a participant who decided to have him take his case to trial because he was in the vehicle with someone who had drugs. And what kind of hurt in a way was for him to be sentenced for 15 years. And at the same time, again, he was close to graduating, from the program, being at 1 year. And it just kind of made me cringe a little bit when I read your article, because it just made me realize that sometimes people, we complain about how little we may get paid or et cetera. But just to look at the article, or I mean, to read the article, Nick, and people getting paid, 10 cents, 5 cents, or maybe no money at all for the labor that they're doing. And I'm not condoning what the person did who was in the car with the individual who may have drugs, but it just kind of made me, think about what can we do or continue to do to share the importance of spiritual instructions or morality, if that resonates, Nick, to you and to anyone else. But that's an experience that I had within the last, within the last month that I wanted to share. I'm done.
Every arrest, George, is an investment. Every arrest is an investment. You need laborers to do what the things that Nick described, and the system is designed to push it that way. It's almost like a funnel, just funneling people into the system. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm pretty much done.
When I read the article, I had so much to come to my memory. One particular is Victoria's Secrets have been doing it forever, almost ever since they've been in business. And the people who were suing for Victoria's Secret didn't even make 2 cents out. However, the deeper thought on that is this. We talk about having been enslaved for 400 years. And we also talk about 150 years, maybe 200 since the end of slavery. Well, I will offer you this. Slavery never ended in this country. It changed forms. And when the 13th Amendment was ratified, it had, excuse me, the southern states who are slave owners had to be forced to ratify it. And the way they forced them to ratify it is they told them they would not be accepted back into the Union if they did not ratify it. And the ratification of that 13th Amendment was only acceptable to Southerners when the addendum was added to it, that you are, no one should be held in servitude or in slavery, with the exception of someone who commits a crime. It's a rough understanding what it's saying. That addendum, except if you commit a crime, is what actually pleased the southern states. And excuse me. And when that happened, immediately the laws of the Black codes, including vagrancy, and had come into effect. And what they did, they meaning the white supremacists or the ex-slave owners, what they did, they began to arrest people for lottery. And every January, African men had to present a letter to the magistrate saying that he was employed. And if at any point he lost his job and was reported to the authorities, he was arrested and put on the chain gang. And he was rented to anyone who needed the labor, and the rent went to the state, of course. Now, and that sounds like, well, this renting somebody, well, they've always done that. On January the 1st of every year during the period of slavery, enslaved people cringed because at the first of every year, since there was no labor needed as much as it would be during the planting and harvest season. At the first of the year, they were all slaves were leased out to other people to do other things. So when we talk about what happened after this amendment, it's the same thing. It's no different than what's been happening during the period of chain gangs in the South. And some of us on this phone remembers that there were people on the chain gang who cut grass for the wealthier white people, and they worked in their stores. They swept their yards or cleaned their yard. They did all these things. So to read about what the article that Nick sent actually reminded as well as reinforced some things I knew. However, I did not understand how pervasive it was. It's pretty much impossible to live in this country and not benefit from prison labor. Because if you go to Costco, Walmart, stores like that, you're benefiting from prison labor. So, so what do we do about it? I think the first step to do something about it was when the article was sent. And now that we are talking about it, it puts it in the macro, our concerns about it. And it make it sound crazy, but this is a response to what would Jesus do? Put it in the macro. That's what we are doing. That's the only thing we can do, because we don't have the authority according to government or through the church to do anything. But we do have the authority, the spiritual authority to change everything. And that's what we are in the process of doing as we speak. I do not think that it was coincidental that Nick came across that article. Everything that we need to put in the macro, we are being made aware of it in different ways. And this is one of the major things. America is 6% of the world population, but imprisons 25% of the world's population. America has 25% of prison population, of the worldwide prison population. America has more prisoners than anyone in the world. And it is also no coincidence that prisons, especially in Louisiana, Mississippi, some parts of South Carolina, are on plantations. So the energy, the thoughts have never changed. And if we are to end enslavement, then we must do it the way that we have brought everything else to the surface. And we are seeing that the balance in the earth as a result of what we have talked about, and that balance is coming through people who are taking more of a stance against what's happening to mankind. I never thought I would live to see the day that anti-Semitic tropes that Jews use to get people on their side or to destroy other people. I never thought I'd live to see the day that it didn't work. And we are at that place now. And I do believe that that's all because of our spiritual desires to bring harmony to the earth. And the involvement of this country in the what's happening in Gaza is no different than what the involvement was in this country with Vietnam and any other war. 250 years existence in a country of a country and you've been at war for 200 years. That's something to think about. So we ought to bring that to an end. And again, I really am appreciative of the article having been sent, because it gives us the opportunity to not only know bits and pieces about something, but to see it with a clear eye so that we can bring it to an end. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. One of the things I like to add, based upon what you stated, Reverend Richard, about we can change this by way of spiritual maneuverability. By way of Angela Davis and Dr. Harry Edwards, as it relates to prison reform, one of the things that can have an impact on people being sent to prison, or the African American being sent to prison, is the significance of a home cooked meal. And studies have shown that people who cop the pleas, or people who are doing 5 years to life, they ain't had too many home cooked meals. So that's a spiritual maneuverability that we can implement to have on that. And that's what they're saying, and I happen to buy into what they're saying. They're also saying that the NFL draft, when someone goes into the first round, in a comparative degree to someone who gets life in prison from 9 years to 20 years, one had more of a home-cooked meal than the other. So if this really concerns us, and it should, what are we going to do to implement the spiritual maneuverability to somewhat alter that? Like I say, I just believe in a home-cooked meal.
Thank you.
What's that?
No, I just said thank you. I thought you were finished.
Okay, then. You're welcome.
Were you finished?
No, I wasn't finished, but you
Well,
probably stopped me at a good time. No. It's just that when we say we got to implement this spiritual maneuverability to impact this, because when you look at the top 5 money producing things on this capitalistic soil, number one is the Department of Defense. And I do believe you need to have a defense. Right behind that is prison industry. Third is not Division I sports, all of college sports, volleyball, football, Division II, Division III, Division I, and 4 and 5 are quite interchangeable, student loans and porn. So, like I said, if this is our goal, like I say, with my family and my children's friends, let's go get something to eat. And it has an impact on them. They look at me differently, or that's just my spiritual maneuverability that I implement to have an effect on prison. My disgust with prison is there is no such thing as prison reform. There is no forgiveness. A man or woman do a crime, they serve their time, they hit the soil in the civilian world. BMW ain't gonna give them a chance. The United Methodist Church. So my bad, Reverend Richard. Go ahead. Y'all have a nice one.
First of all, thank you, George. First of all, everybody I knew had a home cooked meal, and they still went to prison. So I don't see how that affects. However, the idea of a meal, the idea of reform, the idea of not being able to find employment after prison, all of these things are part of systemic racism. The denial of a vote, of the right to vote, because of having committed a felony was instituted for African males, because African males were given the right to vote after slavery. And that felony charge was done for African males so that they could vote. I think that we need to take a look maybe at the whole system, how it, first of all, how it started. People who did not own land at the inception of this country could not vote. It didn't matter, white people, if you were poor and didn't own land, you couldn't vote. Then it came to the place where enslavement was, quote unquote, supposedly ended, and the male was able to vote. And then came the vagrancy laws, the unemployment laws, or the reckless eyeball laws. All these things came into being to intervene in order to keep all Black folk from voting. The prison system was not developed or designed to be reformed. The prison system was supported by the church. And you probably have heard people say, he needs to be in jail. And they don't even know what he did, simply because the news reported something that someone did, whether they did it or not. He needs to be in jail. So the media has indoctrinated a society to believe that all Black males ought to be in jail. And this is not something that happened haphazardly. The males were imprisoned because they were the primary breadwinners. And if you want to cast a family into poverty, especially during the era the segregation, during the era of segregation, and into the era of assimilation that masquerades as integration. In that period, the men were the primary breadwinners. And the reason they were is because females could not get a job. And the men who were working were imprisoned. And when they were imprisoned, they actually, the families would have to depend on washing white people clothes, cleaning their houses, stuff like that. If you look at the background behind Malcolm X, what you will see is that Malcolm X's bitterness, the internal rage that he had, came as a result of what happened to his mama and his daddy. White men came to their house and told them that they were living in an all-white district, a white-only district rather, and they had to give up their house. And Daddy refused. So the dad was beaten to death. And then shortly after that, they came to the house and took his mama and put her in an insane asylum, and the children were left on their own. And Malcolm called his sister in Boston. He went to stay with her. And that's where his bitterness and anger, his rage began to surface. And he was imprisoned, but that was the best thing that ever happened to him, because prison made him who he became. So what I'm saying in essence is this. This did not just start. This has been going on ever since we've been supposedly free from slavery. This is a new method of enslavement. That's all it is, a method of enslavement. And every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock in the African church, that is a method of containment and control. We can containment because every morning at Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, you are told who to vote for, you are told that people in jail need to be in jail or stay away from those people who are out there in those streets, but yet you're going into the highways and byways and bring folk to Jesus. There's never been a bigger lie told. The idea of control is us doing what we are told to do by the church, and the church doing what it was told to do, trying to be like the church, the white churches, and the evangelical churches in particular. So all of these things are portions, are parts of the indoctrination and the imprisonment of the African. And if you imprison the male in their house, you have also imprisoned that family. And when you come out of prison, you cannot get a student loan, you cannot stay in public housing, you cannot get food stamps, you cannot get a job. That is done on purpose. Now let me ask you a question, especially those of you who live in the South. How many white folk who come out of jail you know who couldn't get a job? Can you think of any? I can't. And I know white people who came out of jail and got jobs. Richard Petty became one of the most famous race car drivers, but he went to jail selling liquor. Hear me and hear me well. It is no coincidence that Africans are shown to be brutal and drug dealers, everything except who we are. That was designed that way. And the news media is 100% in support of it. And the church is in support of it and don't even know it. So if we are to change anything in terms of prison, men and people in prison, it has to be changed the same way that we change everything else. And that is understanding there was spirituality before there was religion. And if we cannot change it spiritually, it will not be changed. Am I saying don't cast your vote? No, I'm not. You can do that. Do what you will. But I promise you this. The universe will determine the outcome. And the influence of the universe cannot be altered. So those who submit to the power of the universe, the power of a creator, those who submit to that, embrace the reality of those powers, are able to change everything for everyone. If we don't believe that what we are doing Saturday, Sunday, and Monday is bringing humanity to balance and changing the trajectory of this earth, then we need to shut it down now. I have seen too many things change for me to doubt what we are doing. I embrace it wholeheartedly. I do believe that our Creator brought us together in the manner that we are, not in separate places, but all in one place, because the energy that all of us are made from, the desires that all of us have, strengthens what we are capable, what we are able to get done in this earth. When we know who we are, when we look at the scriptures and see them as the spiritual, as the allegory that they are, and understand that the scriptures are not talking about who God is. The scriptures are talking about who we are. That's what changes things. no voting is not going to do it. The amount of money you have is not going to do it. I knew Angela Davis, and Angela Davis is involved in prison reform. However, as smart as she is, as committed and dedicated as she is, she will not be able to do that. There is no reformation for prisons, none. There is no reformation for this country, none whatsoever. There is restoration for humanity, and that restoration begins with a desire to see everyone through the eyes of a human as well as Elohim. That's when we begin to see change. Open your eye, look around you. What do you see different today than what you saw the last time? Why is it that the universe allowed Trump to be the front runner in the Republican Party and Biden? Why are both of them old men? Why is that? Why is it that the universe allowed these two old men to run for this office? Because it's old white men who have perpetuated this system. It's old white men who will tell you a lie and don't care about it. Look at what McConnell did. He go support the border bill. And then when Donald Trump says, I'll need to run on that, don't support it, he said, okay. Even though he says he doesn't like him. White men are the nemesis of the world. And the ones who are the greatest threat to humanity are the white men who are in charge of this country. Now, Biden and Trump are not in charge of this country. The money people are. And these old men represent, Trump is the voice of the existence of the energy in the Southern Kingdom or the Confederate States. Biden is the consummate abolitionist in the Northern States. You should be free from slavery, but you're still not white. So we're going to maintain the same system. When we get that through our hearts, then we begin to see the Creator allow these men to run so that we can have these spiritual discussions and watch the dismantling of a country that has damn near destroyed the whole world. That's what we do. And there are those who say, well, we need to talk more about the Bible. But guess what? We are. We're just not talking about the Bible that white folk wrote. We're talking about the meaning of it. We're talking about the spiritual essence of it. And the spiritual essence of it is, are you your brother's keeper? If you are, what are you doing to make sure that your brother is protected? We are talking about the scriptures, and the scriptures are real to everything that we are saying. So stay focused on the spiritual aspects of what we do, while at the same time looking at or seeing the material or the governmental or religious things that are happening. And if you look at those things with your eyes, you will be able to discern what's happening with your eye. You will be able to see the signs of the times. But if you are afraid, if you cringe out of fear, you will never understand what's happening, and you will not be able to embrace change if you don't see that change. And change is not going to come and knock on your door and say, here I am. You have to see it in the way that things are being shown to us and how they are being dismantled. Thank you.
Well, Reb, and to the rest of everyone, if an environment is created for people to steal, people gonna steal. by way of a Cabelon, no forms of capital punishment, no prison, no corporal punishment, no stealing. And then asking a seasoned person, hey, why wasn't none of this taking place? And the person told me there was no need to steal. So if we create an environment where there's no need to steal, I believe that people won't steal. Yet if you do create an environment where people have to steal to get to the next second or the next hour, it will take place. So we have to create arenas where there is love, harmony, forgiveness. And if we don't implement that, and once you implement it, you got to follow the course to back up what you say too. Now it's more than just saying something and heck, you don't do nothing. So in this capitalistic soil, the soil has been slanted that we are going to cheat. Well, I ain't gonna say we. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to steal. I'm going to lie. In trucking, when I got into trucking in 2003, we want paperless laws. And when you're out here paper chasing, you're going to do what you got to do to take care of your family, take care of your community. It doesn't justify it.
George, I want to ask you a question.
Well, you can.
I want to ask you a question. I
Yes,
want to back
sir.
you up. I want to back you up. You said you're going to steal, you're going to lie, you're going to cheat. So
What was that again, Rev?
you said you're going to lie, you're going to steal, you're going to cheat. So
Yeah,
what,
I said that, Reverend Richard.
so what is positive about that enhances the role of humanity in the earth?
Well,
Well,
Can I-
Reverend Richard,
This is
number
Nate.
one,
can I interject here? I think what George was saying was that if your environment is one that is pushes you in that direction, it's more likely that you will do that in order to, as George says, do what you have to do in order to provide for your family. I don't think he was saying necessarily that he wanted to, but in general terms, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, George, you meant that that's what the environment is pushing people to do, and so that's what people do. Is that correct?
I have a question about that, because I usually think that same thing that George said, but then as you were talking, George, it occurred to me, there are people who already live in that, if they're wealthy, if they have everything, and yet they do all those things.
Thank
So
you.
is it really environment? Because at first I was like, yeah, George, and I was like, but wait a minute. There are people who already live in that world. They got plenty. And they're main ones doing those things.
That is true, but that is not the majority of people. And it is the influence of those kinds of people in positions of power that reproduces that same attitude. But I would say George is exactly correct when he says that if your environment is loving and stable, you won't steal. For the vast majority of people, that is correct. The problem
So
is,
But
Yeah.
isn't that the
So
whole
he misspoke.
system? Isn't that the whole system? The very wealthy, that's the system of how America was set up. The very wealthy are the ones doing the stealing. The very wealthy are the ones that are operating on greed, that are not only creating this environment, that are ruling the whole world by this same type of system.
yes,
So all the wars that we've talked about, everything that we've discussed, whether or not you're talking about the border, whether or not you're talking about Gaza, all of it starts with greed and separation, the us against the world kind of thing. You have it, we need it, we're going to take it. So that's what we've been taught, and that's what we're brought up with. So when you're pushed in a corner, I see what you're saying, George, and I see what you're saying, Nick. But the whole principle of this whole system is set up that way. And that's what has to be broken and torn down.
Yeah, and Ron, and I think that, when Pastor mentioned about spirituality before religion, I think that, again, us being able to appreciate And I think it was something that Audrey mentioned last week in reference to there are many holy books. I think that we have to be open in terms of being able to realize that we all are one yet many, but at the same time, again, we have to be, again, open to those spiritual, and again, I don't want to say instruction, but those spiritual and those morals, where again, we can appreciate not just being locked into one, particular book. But if we can be open to, Ron, something that you shared in reference to the video about I am,
Yeah.
the Buddhism talk about Aham Brahmasmi, I am the universe, I am the divine. And then we have, again, other, universal books or Metal Netter or whatever, may be a source that we can tap into. But I think, again, the spirituality before religion, I think is something that that definitely resonates with me. And I think that's
Yeah.
where, we need to look at it for the collective consciousness. I'm done. I just want to share those thoughts.
Thank you, George. We don't.
Reb, the answer. You go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, Reb, the reason why I stated I lie, cheat, and steal, because it just sounds better than to say we lie, cheat, and steal. Because if Mr. George out of Philly would say, yay, we lie, cheat, and steal out here, I'd be the first to say, speak for yourself.
Well,
So
see,
by me saying,
matter. George, when we say we not paint everybody with the same brush. We are not talking about individuals on this phone or on Zoom. We're not talking about that. What we are talking about is systemic. We're talking about systems. We're talking about the overarching principles and policies that's been introduced to a society, or that a society, or that people within that society has been forced to do. So to say that, speak for yourself, is totally out of sync with what we're talking about, because we're not talking about individuality. For example, when I say America is a racist country, I am not saying that everyone in America is racist. Does that make sense?
yeah, Reverend Richard, that was just my answer to your question.
Okay, thank you.
But I appreciate what you said.
Yeah. So we have to keep our minds focused on the reality that we are not talking about individuals, because when you really think about it, there is absolutely nothing that we can do politically or religiously to change anything. Not one thing. We've been marching and fighting and burning and crying and shouting and praying, and nothing has changed. Nothing. Because our expectations have been that men will change things. That is not going to happen. It's not going to happen, because the weapons of our warfare are not material. They are spiritual. And if the weapons of our warfare, if they are spiritual, then the question becomes, what are those weapons? What are they? They are our dedication to understanding the spiritual nature of what exists, so that we can affect change. But that only happens when we recognize that we are energy, we are spirit ourselves. And it takes spiritual understanding to bring the change. Everything that was created by the spoken word. So our weapons, the greatest weapons that we have, forgiveness, loving kindness, love, the greatest weapons that we have. Because love covers a multitude of sin, meaning that love covers a multitude of entanglements. That racism is covered by love. And I've said this 1,000 times, we cannot change racism. The people who perpetuate it has to be the one who change it, and we can't force them to do that. However, knowing that we are Elohim, we can put it in the macro. We can put it in a place where it is available to everyone. And that's what we are doing. That is what our desire is. If we could individually change something, then Martin Luther King would have changed it. And I say to you, you say, only thing that most of people know about King is his I Have a Dream. But go to YouTube and listen to the rest of the speeches, and he is saying basically what I am saying, what we are saying, but he's simply saying it in a different way. I have to go for a moment. I have to see about Phoebe.
I can add to that. Yeah, just we cannot change the people who have dedicated their entire existence to the path of selfishness and confusion. But energetically and spiritually, we can sort of pull the rug out from underneath them, which is what this shift in consciousness is in terms of our ability to shift humanity's consciousness individually, collectively, away from that path that those who are in the sort of quote unquote elite positions of power want us to go down. Because that path that they want to reinforce and continue us going down is one of exactly that, where we recreate the same greed, insanity, and chaos that they possess. And that is sort of how the system reinforces itself. It becomes a feedback loop. But the ultimate foundation of that system is spiritual in nature. And so when you pull the rug out from underneath that system, it creates the ability to massively shift or change the social and political expression of the underlying spiritual state. It creates the ability, or allows for the ability, to very quickly shift what we appear, what sort of appears obviously around us. But it is done at the spiritual level, and I also believe that that is more or less our only true option at this point. And it always has been, I think, but it is explicitly obvious that the system itself will never accept change. And of course, the answer to that is you go around it, or you go underneath it. And that is exactly what we are attempting to do by remaining aware of the spiritual foundation upon which all of this sits. When we investigate our own selves and attempt to make contact with the macro, when we attempt to hold things in our awareness and allow them to be examined from a spiritual angle as opposed to a purely sort of social or political one, then we have the ability to influence that spiritual underpinning. Then we have the ability to, as I said, pull the rug out from underneath the attempt to increase the level of chaos and sort of infighting that we do as a result of what the extremely egotistical people in positions of power attempt to force on everyone beneath them, quote unquote. Thank you.
Nick, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Barb. I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
have a question
So
too.
this is Brania.
Hey, Rainey, I'm sorry.
I'll say mine. I hope it's not too long. I know someone else had a question. We keep talking about racism, and I think the thing with racism is it points to it has the negative ring of I hate you, because you are fill in the blank, right? And I'm gonna treat you that way. And it's been interesting to think about the idea that Isabel Wilkerson wrote about caste, because it's no longer about hating you, it's about these rules, right? Like we had religious rules and you believed them, no matter what, you didn't question them. And it wasn't even about hate, it was just about that's the way it is. And I feel like that's part of the issue. We tell someone they're racist, they thought it's, I'm not racist, I have black friends or I have white friends, whatever, fill in the blank. But if it's the idea that the way you move and through the world and see it is based on these rules that someone established, that you've accepted, that we've all accepted, and we treat people accordingly, I think goes back to breaking a system as opposed to living within the system. Kind of what you were talking to, Nick. I feel like to break it, you almost have to show it. And I don't know that racism quite shows it in the way that we say this is us saying that a person is born into a situation and they can never leave it because of their birth. And to know that, I've accepted that, I believe that that this person's born in this situation because of their color or what have you. I mean, it is a fundamental way of looking at something that is the system right? Is this a system I want to continue to embrace? But anyway, sorry, that's kind of the question I had, or the thoughts I had as you were talking, and I think someone else had a question too.
Well, I had a comment. And as Nick was talking and as Pastor was talking, I was thinking about, okay, so how does Nikki Haley fit into this? And with her saying the kinds of things that she was saying. So Nikki is just in the feedback loop. She's just saying the kinds of things she thinks she needs to say to get elected. But it's just interesting to me that she can put on that other hat and say racism has nothing to do with what happened in Charleston. But here's a woman who grew up in Batesburg, South Carolina.
Ask her why she can't use her first name anywhere in the South.
Yeah,
Nonsense.
grew up in Batesburg, South Carolina, and her parents are Sikhs. She must have had racism up the wazoo growing up down there. And here she is saying there was no racism involved. Well, she's right to a certain degree, because it's bigger than racism. It's white supremacy, and wanting to create like a race war. So that's a whole lot bigger. But it's just interesting to me, and I just want to ask, what role is she playing that she would come along and say there's no racism, when we all know this whole country was built on racism. It's so endemic in the system that people want to deny it. Anyway, so what is her role?
Well, I'll give.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay.
I'll speak after you.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to give my response. Nikki Haley is an example of the attempt to spiritually go in the right direction despite being under the umbrella of that system. So she's technically a woman of color, even though she has drank the Kool-Aid of of that system, and that system absorbs, and as Pastor Richard has described it, assimilates everything it touches. It's a combination of a variety of things. Part of it is fatigue as well, because you want to at some point stop fighting, and if that means the people who oppress you have to win, there are people who do that. They will assimilate in that way. But anyway, yeah, that's my response to that.
All right, thanks, Nick. I see Nikki no differently than I see Tim Scott. She is the representative of feminine energy, and he is the representative of masculine energy. That's, has, as Nick said, drink the Kool-Aid of European mindset. They have been assimilated into that mindset because they are looking for a reward. And in Nikki's case, she is not running to win this primary at all. Nikki is positioning herself for 28.
Yeah.
Tim Scott, on the other hand, is positioning himself to get a cabinet appointment. They are the face of what we have always seen. We have always seen that there are those who will do whatever it takes to please the master. And that's what they are doing. Everything they can to please Donald Trump. The attitude of the master who enslaves anybody of color. Both of them would give both of their arms and both of their legs if they could be white. That's their mindset. And to the extent that they have assimilated, it is very difficult to help them pull back from what they have embraced. Don't fool yourself. Tim Scott represents a number of people who look like him. Nikki Haley is totally in denial. Why do I say that about her and not Tim Scott? Nikki Haley is in denial because she would not have been able to eat, or she would not have shelter or clothes if it were not for African people in Bamberg, or for Africa in Voorhees rather, because her daddy could not get a job anywhere except Voorhees. So it was us who fed her, us who educated her, us who did everything that was necessary for her to grow. But at the same time that that was happening, she was buying all the bleaching glow she could find. She did not just begin to want to look like white people. She's always done that. And in order for you to be successful as assimilating, you must denounce everybody who look like you. All the principles that govern the people who look like you, you have to denounce them. You have to tell the world that those color folk over there are wrong. I'm standing with Trump because I love him. Those kinds of things is what happens. And this is not the first time. It seems to be so new simply because the means of communications that are available were not available earlier. So it doesn't really change anything in actuality. Look at the guys who work for the FBI, who were involved with the killing of Malcolm X, the assassination of Malcolm X. Look at the ones who were on King's team, who, by virtue of them reporting on him, were party to what happened to him. That's where we are. And I say to you that as much as it is irritating, embarrassing, it is necessary, because that attitude must also be exposed if it's to be changed. And our feelings or our thoughts about Scott and Nikki are no different than they are about Trump. They're representative of something. That's it. And I agree wholeheartedly with Nick. Let her use her first name while she's campaigning, and see what happens to her. Nikki was put out there to be a pawn just in case nobody voted for Trump in terms of the primary. Nikki is representative of the same principles that Trump represents. It's just a brown woman representing principles, looking in the mirror and not liking what she sees. She is self-hate. And that's not, this just did not just start. All of us have known that, known people now when we grew up who were the same way. It's just self-hate. And guess what? Most African preachers are no different than Tim Scott. They just articulate it better. They hide it better. When Martin Luther King first started that boycott, the National Baptist Convention president said that he was a troublemaker. And he represented 7 million people and Black folk in this country. And he said he was a troublemaker and encouraged people to stay away from him. And the younger preachers organized the Progressive National Baptist Convention to support Martin Luther King. So Jackson, who was the president of the National Baptist Convention, was no different than Tim Scott. And all the preachers who want to be in the favor of the city council or the sheriff, all these people who are collecting money to take people to the poll, these people are no different than Tim Scott. And most Black pastors are Tim Scotts in disguise. It's just that simple. I'm done. Oh, and I'm not speculating, by the way. I've been in the rooms with them. And I know what they've said and how they think when it comes to politicians.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good job.
Ron, this is Evelyn.
Hey, Evelyn.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
What has been said, it's been a lot that's been said, and it's real heavy. I mean, we all have been thinking the same thing about Tim Scott and Nikki Haley. And Pastor, I'm glad you mentioned that Tim Scott is just like the rest of these undercover preachers. They do the same thing. Because every time I see Tim Scott on TV, I'm like, oh my God, he just disgusts me. But since you mentioned that about him being just like the the preachers that are hiding it in the pulpit, whatever, they're the same. But earlier when Pastor was talking about how we deal with things spiritually, and he also mentioned the scripture I was looking at in 2 Corinthians, the 2 Corinthians 10th chapter, the 3rd, 4th, and 6th verse. And the 3rd verse talks about how we deal with things spiritually. And it says that for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. And then it says on the 4th verse, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. And then in the 5th verse, it says, put my readers on. It says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of God. And then the 6th verse says, and having in a readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. As far as the revenge part, I'm not sure about that. But it was just something when you guys first started off that those scriptures came to me. And Pastor had broke down how we deal with things in the universe. We put it out there in the macro. And that's how we deal with things. It's not about getting revenge on anybody, because I do know that I'm one with you. And it's all about getting things done, bringing balance and harmony in the universe. But that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Evelyn, give me the chapter again.
Say that one more time.
That you were reading from.
Okay, 2 Corinthians, 10th chapter, verses 3 through 5.
You said 1 Corinthians, what chapter?
No, sir.
10.
Hold on a minute.
Chapter 10.
Yes.
It's 2 Corinthians, yes, 10th chapter, the 3rd through the 5th verse.
Okay. I have a reason for asking you that, to do that.
I know you do.
May I deal with this for a moment? What's being said here? For though we walk in the flesh, though we walk in these bodies, we do not war according to these bodies. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh; they're not made with our hands, but divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, that's raised up against the knowledge of you. If you are Elohim, then it's saying that destroying everything, every lofty thing that raised up against the knowledge of Elohim, and we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, meaning that we are taking everything captive to the obedience of the anointing that we are. What does that mean? What that means is all the thoughts that's out there that is destroying humanity, the thoughts that are being put into action, like in Gaza, it is up to us to bring those thoughts to a place of obedience, which means that they must be reformed in order to restore order. And we are ready to punish all disobedience whenever your obedience is complete. All this is saying is that it's showing us what our responsibility is. If you believe that you are Elohim, then this is your responsibility. This is our responsibility. If we believe that we're Elohim, our words must be calculated, thought through, precise, because they are powerful. Walking through the streets, throwing Molotov cocktails changes nothing. Nothing. But when with the knowledge of being Elohim, everything can be changed if we do it the way that the Spirit has guided us to do it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that's what we're doing now, right? On Monday, Wednesday, even when we're not meeting on the phone, we are doing that every day.
Every single day. every single day.
The pulling down of the stronghold is that think of it as a consciousness that has captured the world that we live in a particular way. It is the changing of that mindset. It is the dissolving of what is pushing back against the influence of the true nature of the creator and humanity, which is what you are. When you instinctively know that something is wrong about what is going on or the system that has been created.
Thank you.
Thank you. The funny thing is show you how much we're on the same page. Pastor mentioned something 10, 15 minutes ago when he talked about the spoken word, and I was thinking the spoken word is nothing was created, everything was created through the spoken word. And I went back and looked at Genesis chapter when it said God, and God said, and God said, and God said, being Elohim, the spoken word is recognizing who you are. You just tied that together beautifully without even saying that. The recognizing that you're Elohim and using it, you just come through Corinthians, but you said the same thing. That beautifully said. That seems like a great place to take a pause unless somebody has another question or comment on where we are right now. Anybody? So that this.
Well, Ron, I just want to say,
yes, ma'am.
When we would read this, when we would go over this scripture in church, it didn't resonate with me at all. I mean, it was just something that was just read over. But now that we're talking about this morning, everything in here is just resonating with me. So thank you for what has been said and put out in the macro. I'm done.
Well, that's another good point. I mean, we were when we were raised and coming up in the church, we didn't understand all these words. We didn't understand what the scriptures were saying. We went to church with hope. We went to church and built on what we had learned, what God looked like, and what we were trying to pursue. So yeah, I mean, we've what you're saying is you see how far we've come. Your vision now is internal; it's not external, and that's the beauty of this. When we talk now, Evelyn, what you're saying is that is part of your meditation, part of our lessons in these AMs and Monday evening is part of our meditation, listening to the words as they resonate through your body. So yeah, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. And I for one need this, as I mentioned the pastor, sometimes I find myself being a bit impatient when I see stuff going on. And it helps me to regain and hold on to who I am and my focus when we have these discussions. So thank you. Very well said. Yes, sir. Okay.
I want to, before we close, I want to give you the meeting ID and the passcode for California for the African African discussions about African history that we're going to have. I was supposed to be going to California. You know, most of you know that I'm not able to go because of some mitigating circumstances at home. But we're going to do it on Zoom. I don't know how many people are going to be there, maybe 10, maybe 100, I don't know. But I'm going to give you the meeting ID. I just got it this week. If you have pen ready or whatever, however you want to receive it, I'm going to give it to you in just a moment. I almost said you can stop recording now, and the you can stop is me, right? So I'm going to stop the recording. However, I'm going to give you the number, okay?
Okay.